Om Sarashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. Good. Be seated, please. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahavidyan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Very good. Welcome back. Welcome also to the many students attending this class regularly online. We continue our study of chapter 8. We're actually coming towards the end of the chapter, perhaps next week. And here, of course, just to set the context, we have Sri Krishna who has taken the form of a hamsa, a swan, to teach the four Manasaputras, the four mind-born sons of Brahmaji. And the general discussion has been how to overcome the gunas. And in particular, overcoming the gunas means becoming guna atita, which you remember from the Bhagavad Gita. Beyond the gunas is a synonym for enlightenment. So, we see at the end of this verse this wonderful, really, I'm surprised, a wonderful exposition on enlightenment, what it takes to become enlightened, what is the condition of being enlightened, and I guess I'm expressing a little bit of surprise because the Bhagavata Purana is not primarily understood as a Vedanta text. But the verses we're going to see today are among the most profound Vedantic verses you'll find anywhere. Just two observations real quickly, then we'll plunge in. First of all, the Bhagavata Purana is best known for stories. Stories of the 10 incarnations of Lord Krishna and all of this stuff. It's best known for stories. There are some Vedantic sections. We've chosen these Vedantic sections from Uddhava Gita, but now what we're seeing is even more. In our last class, we saw that the meter has changed from our usual brief meter, which has 8 syllables in a quarter, to a famous meter called Vasanta Tilaka. And this is a meter much loved by scholars. Scholars who have interesting loves, as you can imagine. Most of us, including me, find it a little bit difficult to recite, but the importance here is that when you have more syllables to express yourself in each verse, it's easier to express much more profound teachings. So we have 5 more verses in this Vasanta Tilaka meter. Each of these verses are unusually profound. In my introduction before, I said it's almost like reading Shankaracharya. It is so deeply Vedantic. It's unusual in that way. So you'll see that as we continue. And we'll pick up the thread. Evam vimrashya gunato manasastravastha Evam vimrishya gunato manasastravastha manmayaya mayi krita hiti nishchitartha manmayaya mayi krita hiti nishchitartha sanchidya hardamanumana sadukta tikshna Hardam Anumana Sarukti Tiksh Jnana Sina Bhajata Mam Kila Bhajata Mam is the meaning. Jnana Sina Bhajata Ma Kila Samshayadim Jnana Sina Bhajata Ma Kila Sanshayadhin. Good. This particular melody, there's a lot of the Suprabhatams and a lot of the literature actually in this Ramanuja Vaishnava tradition. They like this prayers in this particular meter. But here, not a prayer. Very, very profound Vedantic teachings. In the prior verse, the verse discussed the three states of experience: waking, dream, and deep sleep. There's an unusual focus in Advaita Vedanta on these three states of experience, and it's not unusual because everything you experience, without exception, falls into one of these three states. Everything you experience happens either in a waking state, dream state, or deep sleep state. If you say, what about samadhi? Well, hopefully samadhi is part of your waking state and not part of your deep sleep. That happens for some people. Okay? So, basically, the three states of experience are meant to encompass all human experience. And Sri Krishna refers to that here. He says, Evam vimrishya, having analyzed, having understood thoroughly those, and go to the end of the line now, tri avastha, those three states of experience, waking, dream, and deep sleep. These three states of experience, which are manasaha, which belong to your mind. There's I made mention in the last class, I think, the common mistake of saying three states of consciousness. Consciousness has no states. Consciousness is unchanging. So consciousness has no states. These states, how clearly does he say it? These three states are manasaha. They're states of the mind. And these states are gunataha. They're born of gunas. Sattva, rajas, tamas. Consciousness is nirguna, or guna atita, without guna. So anyway, you won't make this mistake. Consciousness has no states. These three states belong to the mind. And they encompass everything you've experienced from childhood up to this prior moment. All of your experiences occur in your mind. Do they not? That's what he's saying. Waking state is a state of your mind. What you're experiencing right now is whatever is happening in your mind. You experience what's happening in the room around you only indirectly. So right now you have the direct experience of whatever is happening in your mind. And according to Sri Krishna, whatever is happening in your mind is krita, in the second line, it is made manmayaya. It is made through my maya, my power of creativity. Sri Krishna here speaks as Ishvara, creator, sustainer, destroyer of the cosmos. And he says that everything you experience in your mind is due to man maya, my maya, and it is also mayi, in me. This is cryptic, but some of you will get it. In me, in consciousness. Where does experience take place? These three states of experience, do you experience them, waking, dream, and sleep? Do you experience them inside your head? That sounds funny, right? Do you experience them inside your brain? We don't experience our brain. As I understand, there are no pain sensors in your brain. If you poke your brain with a needle, you won't feel a thing. Of course, getting there is another thing. But if your brain were exposed and you poke it with a needle, you won't feel a thing. So you don't experience things in your head. You don't experience things in your brain. Your mind is where the experience takes place. We can say experience takes place in consciousness. Just like the activities of this room take place in space, the activities in your mind take place in consciousness. This is a nice metaphor because the space in this room is just a little bit of a vast, limitless space. In the same way, the consciousness manifest in your mind is like this room space. It's just a little bit of a much vaster, universal space. Paramatma, the limitless space, limitless consciousness. So Sri Krishna then concludes, iti, thus, nishchita, at the end of the second line, nishchita artaha. Those who have understood this properly, those who have analyzed experiences in the three states of experience, and those who have understood properly that whatever happens is due to, Sri Krishna says, it occurs due to my creative capacity of Maya, creating the world. Also, it occurs mayi, in me, in consciousness. Well, what about those wise ones? Nishchita, artaha, those who have understood properly. Sanchidya, third line. Having cut, having severed. Having severed what? Go down to we have to jump around a little bit. And last word of the verse. Having severed akila samshaya adhim. Having severed akila, all, samshaya, all doubts, and adi here means suffering. Adhim, often mental suffering, but just suffering in general. So having broken free from all of this suffering which is due to our failure to understand the reality of what is, our suffering, which I was just working on a video. Let's just understand what is this suffering. The difference between pain and suffering is something most people don't discern. Pain is a physical reality. An enlightened person gets a headache just like you get a headache. But there's a big difference. When you get a headache, you go on complaining, oh, this hurts. Oh, when is this headache going away? Oh, why is that Tylenol not working better? Whatever. You go on complaining. The enlightened person has the same pain in his or her head, just without all that nonsense. The head is throbbing. What can I do? Let's continue our class. By the way, I don't have a headache. I don't mean to imply that. So the point here, though, is that suffering, adi, that suffering is, in fact, he gives a word, it is hardam. Third line. Hardam literally belongs to the heart. Heart means mind. The locus of samshaya, doubt and ignorance, and the locus of adhi, suffering. The locus is hardam. It's in your mind, which is good news. I've said several times before, if Atma truly owned suffering, if Atma truly suffered, then you all have my permission to leave, because this teaching becomes useless. Fortunately, that's not the case. And the point I'm making, Atma, we said, was unchanging. If the unchanging nature of Atma is to be subject to suffering, say, kya karenge? Well, you'll say, what can you do? There's nothing you can do. But that's not the case. It feels like the case. When your head is pounding, it feels like Atma is affected. But that feeling is deceptive. We've discussed that in many other contexts. Feelings are deceptive. Watching the sun go down is deceptive. Seeing the blue sky is deceptive. So the experience of pain is also deceptive. So Atma is absolutely free, untouched, unaffected by headaches or anything else. So the nishchitartaha, the wise ones, having recognized all this, sanchidya hardam akhila samshaya adhim, and having cut through all of their doubts and having removed the suffering. And how did they cut through? And here's a familiar metaphor. How do you cut? Remember, this is lofty poetry. So here comes a nice metaphor. How do you cut doubts? With a really sharp knife? Not exactly a knife. In fact, a hatchet. Or a knife, could be. A sword, there you go. Asi is a sword. This is and what kind of sword? Jnana asi, with the sword of knowledge. Here's our metaphor. The sword of knowledge, what kind of sword of knowledge? It is tikshna, very sharp. By the way, I'm going to give more meaning to all of this in just a moment. So having chopped off all of those doubts and ignorance and having become freed from suffering by this sharp axe of knowledge, and if that metaphor sounds familiar, it should. Sri Krishna used it in chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita, so he's using it again here. So the sharp axe of knowledge, of course, that's metaphor. Now, what does that metaphor represent? It represents anumana and sadukti, if you can make out those words in the third line. Anumana, reasoning, logic. And sadukti, the ukti, the sayings, the wisdom of sat, of sadhus, of the good people, enlightened people. When we can put this together, anumana, yukti, sadukti, shruti. So here we have shruti, sadukti. Shruti meaning scripture. Anumana is definitely yukti, reasoning. And tikshna jnana, clear, precise knowledge, which is the result of also experience, removing any possible conflict with experience. So here we have Shruti, Yukti, Anubhava, and I'm pointing this out just to show what in my introduction, what I said was that the Bhagavad Gita is widely known for its stories. How about this? This verse is just solid. Advaita Vedanta, very deep, very powerful. So what is the result? Using that sharpened axe of knowledge, which is in the form of Shruti, Yukti, Anubhava, to slash away all of the doubts and ignorance and become free from suffering, then what Sri Krishna says, next step, bhajata mam. Then you got nothing else to do, so you might as well worship me. Now, I'm making fun of this, but there's actually something very, not surprisingly, but something very profound here. And that is, before enlightenment, you worship an Ishvara who is only partially known to you. Correct? In fact, the villager in India who stands before the altar and prays, what does that villager know about Ishvara? Something, but not much. Certainly not as we're studying here in our classes on Advaita Vedanta. So that villager worships the deity on the altar. For that villager, that piece of stone on the altar is the God of the cosmos. That's how the villager sees it. This stone, and nice when you go to the villages, you see these grama devatas, these village deities. And literally, a stone painted with this orange vermilion, and then they put two eyes on it. That's Bhagavan. And for the villager, that stone is Ishvara. So nothing, by the way, I'm not being critical. In fact, that's good, because they have a focal point, those villagers have a focal point for their devotion, and perhaps in time, some teacher comes to the village and gives them some further instruction, and they come up. The point I'm making is that that villager's knowledge of Ishvara is limited. Anyone who is not yet enlightened is a little bit like that villager in the sense that their knowledge of Ishvara is limited, not complete. Only when you are enlightened do you have complete knowledge of who that intelligent source of the cosmos really is. And that's where Sri Krishna ends this verse. When you become enlightened by chopping away all of those doubts and ignorance, then you get to see who Ishvara really is. And you get to see that that Ishvara is not different than the consciousness that's present in your experience right now. So that's what Sri Krishna ends with that comment. He says, bhajata mam. Those wise people worship me because of their knowledge. Let me just make that point a little bit more clear, and we'll move on. Enlightenment allows you to see Ishvara everywhere all the time. You get that, right? You've heard these teachings plenty. You can understand that comment. An enlightened person sees Ishvara everywhere all the time, or to use slightly different language, the enlightened person sees only Ishvara. Sarvam kalvidam brahma. There is nothing but Brahman. In this language, there is nothing but Ishvara. This is a vision of the enlightened person. So if all you see is Ishvara, how can you not worship? It's like if you're standing here at the altar and there's no one else around distracting you, and you don't have your cell phone, another source of distraction. And you're standing here at the altar with no other source of distraction, what else can you do? Worship comes naturally if there's no distraction. So the enlightened person, we could say figuratively speaking, has no distractions whatsoever. Therefore, the enlightened person's appreciation of Ishvara is constant, unbroken. Okay, these are wonderful verses. Let's see the next one. Ikshate vibramadam. I'm sorry. Iksheta. No wonder I'm not getting it right. Iksheta vibramit. Iksheta vibramam. Iksheta vibramamidam manaso vilasam. Iksheta vibramamidam manaso vilasam. Drishtam vinashtam atilolam alata chakram. Drishtam vinashtam atilolam alata chakram. Vijnanam ekamurudeva vibhati maya. Vijnanam ekamurudeva vibhati maya. Swapnastridha guna visarga krito vikalpaha. Swapnastridha guna visarga krito vikalpaha. Nice meter. Ikshate, one who iksheta. Why am I keep reading that wrong? Iksheta, one should see, one should understand idam, this world. One should understand this world is vibramam. This world is literally a delusion. The language you've heard me use recently, the world is not as real as it seems. The world is not as real as you. It's actually a mistake to say that the world has no reality whatsoever. You can't, like the elephant in my hand, you can say, has no reality whatsoever. You can't say that about the world. On the other hand, the world is not absolutely real. So Shankara makes this point very clearly. This is obviously not Shankara, but Shankara says again and again, this world has an intermediate level of existence. It's not like the elephant in my hand, nor is it like an elephant in your dreams, nor is it as real as Brahman. It has an intermediate level of reality we call vyavaharika satta. And this world you experience, once again he says, manasaha vilasam. The world you experience directly is a vilasam, it is a play, a drama, it's a Bollywood film, as it were, that takes place, manasaha, in your mind. And not just in dreaming, right now. This drama, we've talked about this just in a prior verse. Let's make sure you get it clearly. The drama that we're experiencing right now, at an external level, takes place in this lecture hall. But what you experience directly is what's happening in your mind. And that's what he's referring to here as manasaha vilasam, this play of life that takes place in your mind, which is drishtam vinashtam. Drishtam, it comes into appearance. Vinashtam, it goes away. Certainly that's true of everything in your dreams. When you go to sleep, drishtam. When you wake up, vinashtam. But what about this world? When you dream, what happens to this world? Vinashtam. And when you wake up from a dream, drishtam. So just as your dream experience comes and goes, your waking experience comes and goes. Drishtam, vinashtam. And this experience is atilolam. Nice Poetry. Ati lolam, always changing. In your experience, waking state experiences, always changing. Dream state experiences, always changing. Deep sleep, technically, there's no experience. You are consciousness experiencing nothing. There's nothing to be experienced. If there's nothing to be experienced, there's nothing to change. But whenever you're awake or dreaming, atilolam, extremely changeable. And, nice metaphor, alata chakram. That word alata, some of you know from the Gaudapada Karika. It's the name of the last chapter. That alata shanti. Alata is a burning stick. This is a nice metaphor. That's what it means. Alata is a burning stick. Chakram, a circle made with a burning stick at night. In fact, you've done this. Deepavali, you take the sparklers or something and you swing it around. What do you see? When you take that sparkler and swing it around, you see a circle. That circle, of course, is completely illusory. Interesting how that comes. We have a factor of our eyesight called persistence. Whatever you see, when it goes away, your brain holds on to the image a little while, which is a good thing because it gives you the sense of continuity. When you're watching your TV, you've heard me make this comment before, you're watching 30 pictures each second. 30 different pictures each second. When you go into a movie theater, you only get 24. So watching TV is better? I don't know. I don't know if you can make that judgment, but there's this technical difference. The point is that if you saw blink, 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 you wouldn't enjoy it. But you don't. You see continuity. That continuity is created by your brain and the optical mechanism in your brain. Interesting. What an argument for the fact that we do not see reality as it truly is. Because when you're watching TV, the reality is you're seeing blink, 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 blink 30 times a second. You don't see 30 times a second. You see continuity. Your brain is filling in the gaps in between those 30 pictures. In math, they call it interpolation. Remember something about that? You're filling in the gaps. Your brain is automatically filling in the gaps. What does that tell you? It tells you what you're experiencing is created by your brain, at least partially created by your brain. So that's the metaphor of Alata chakra, spinning that firebrand, they call it, around. You get the illusion of a circle. Your brain creates that illusion of a circle, and that's a metaphor to describe that the world you experience is not as real as it seems. Second half of this verse. So in order for all these experiences to exist, and we've just admitted that the experiences are not absolutely real, but you still experience them. If those experiences, let's turn it around. Those experiences must have some basis. There must be some underlying reality because of which those transient experiences can exist. The metaphor we use all the time is that this pot is not as real as clay. The pot is transient. It didn't exist once upon a time, and if I ever drop it, it'll cease to exist. The pot, the clay will continue to exist. But here the point is, if the pot, when you see the pot, even if you don't know what it's made of, you know it's made of something. Because a pot can't exist which is made of no material whatsoever. What would that be like? Suppose I have a pot in this hand which is made of nothing. I have a pot in this hand made of clay. I have a pot in this hand made of nothing. What is that pot? It doesn't exist. So for a pot to exist, it has to be made of something. Right now, are you experiencing nothing or something? We're experiencing something. What is that something made of? That's the second half. It is made of vijnanam, consciousness. Ekam vijnanam, one consciousness, which is uruddha iva, which is uruddha, manifold, iva, as though manifold, vibhati, it appears in many forms. What you're experiencing right now is happening in your mind. How many different things are you experiencing right now? Many. And what are they made of? This is a little tricky question. We do this a lot in our Vedanta class. Nice to do it here. This pot is made of clay. This cloth is made of threads. What are your thoughts made of? What an interesting question. The pot is made of clay. Pot is a form. The content of this form is clay. Thoughts are forms. If you're looking at me, your thought has a form of a Swami. What is the content of the Swami thought? Consciousness. In your experience right now are many forms, which are all forms of ekam vijnanam, one consciousness. Many forms, vibhati, which appear because of ekadha eva, ekam vijnanam, one consciousness, uruddha eva vibhati, appears as though in many forms. This language is just wonderful. That's why I'm so surprised. Where are the stories? We had that nice story about the Hamsa meeting the four sons of Brahma, but here, pure Vedanta. And Sri Krishna continues, he says that all of this is Maya. It is a projection, which is swapna, like a dream. It is a dream-like projection, which is, end of the line, vikalpaha, which is a projection. What kind of projection? Guna visarga kritaha. It is a projection which is made of, visarga means creation here. Guna visarga, a creation of the gunas. And you can see previously, tridha, this threefold creation of gunas. Here we go. The pot, skip the clay part. We're talking about the pot part right now. We can describe this pot in terms of weight. It weighs several ounces. We can describe it in terms of color. It's reddish. We can describe it in forms of shape. It is round. So, how will you describe the forms in your mind? The forms in your mind don't have weight, color, or shape, but the forms in your mind definitely have sattva, rajas, and tamas. So the three gunas describe the forms in your mind, and just like the content of this pot is one clay, the content of all your many, many thoughts is one consciousness, ekam vijnanam. I'm shaking my head. I don't recall seeing this level of profundity anywhere else in whatever portions I've studied of the Bhagavata Purana This is highly unusual. Let's see another verse. Drishtam tata praninivartya nivritta trishnas. Drishtam tata pratinivartya nivritta trishnas. Tushnim bhaven nija sukhanubhavo nirihaha. Tushnim bhaven nija sukhanubhavo nirihaha. Sandrishyate kvacha yadidamavastu buddhya. Sandrishyate kvacha yadidamid buddhya. Tyaktam brahmaya nabhavet smritirani patat. Tyaktam brahmaya nabhavet smritirani patat. Drishtim tataha. Tataha pratinivartya. A wise person. Pratinivartya, turns around. Tataha, from this illusion, which is drishtim, from the illusion which is seen. The nice verb, pratinivartya, you completely turn away from the illusion. And let's make sure that we understand here. What is the illusion? I've been saying again and again, it's not an illusion. So in what sense do we call it an illusion? The illusion, here comes the illusion. If this pot were not made of clay, if this pot were made of solid gold, there would be an illusion. What is the illusion? The illusion of value. Right? It's still a pot. Of course, I don't think I could hold it with one hand. If it were really made of gold, it would be quite heavy. But the point I'm making is, pot is just a pot, right? A pot, the value, the pot doesn't say, I'm valuable, correct? We say, if it's a gold pot, we come along and say, hey, that's several ounces of gold. What is the rate for gold today? And we calculate it out. Anyway, so we superimpose value on objects. We call this Shobhana Adhyasa. Very important topic. Comes in, I think, Viveka Chudamani, other texts as well. Shobhana Adhyasa. We come along and superimpose value or lack of value. It's just a clay pot, throw it. So we are the one who make these arbitrary judgments about what is valuable and what is not. Why is gold more valuable than clay? We just decided gold is more valuable than clay. And it turns out there is a principle. Try this. If gold were more plentiful than clay, would it still be so valuable? Interesting. So that rarity factor comes in. Anyway, the point I'm making is that we exert this judgment. What is, in fact, we like our favorite words, good and bad. A gold pot, good. A worthless clay pot, bad. Not bad, but useless, valueless. We superimpose the value on that which is neutral. A pot as a thing is neither good nor bad. We come along and label things. Basically, I like it, I don't like it. Like I've given the example too many times, this Karela. Do you like bitter gourd? Is bitter gourd good or bad? 50-50, depending on people. So here, let me get the trend here. The point here is we superimpose value unnecessarily on all worldly things. And we superimpose value because the true source of happiness and contentment is not in all the worldly things. The true source, as we've discussed many times, lies within. But that true source within gets superimposed, as it were, on all these externals. So here, he's saying, pratinivartya, having turned your back on this false superimposition of value. So all these goodies, people, how much time do people spend in the mall? Or, actually, not, we have to update the metaphor. How many times do people spend on Amazon.com shopping? That's our updated metaphor. So you spend lots and lots of time shopping, and throughout your lifetime, you collect lots and lots of goodies, and then you die. What's the point? Or, you spend your lifetime, you educate yourself, you take extra training, and you do this overtime, and you take this job and that job, and you climb up the corporate ladder, you climb up so high, and then you die. You get my point. So the wise person, parinivartya, is one who has recognized, not that that stuff is useless. It has its own worldly value, but none of it will make you perfectly content. Correct? That's all we're saying. None of that. No matter how many goodies you collect, no matter how high you climb on that ladder, none of that will ever make you perfectly content. Therefore, that person, pratinivartya, having turned away from that, why? Look at the second line. Tushnim bhavet nija sukha anubhavaha. Nija sukha anubhava. This person has the anubhava, the experience of the sukha, ananda, fullness, completeness, perfection, which is nija, one's own. When you appreciate the true source of contentment as being your own true self, as consciousness, then such a person, not tushnim, that sakara shouldn't be there. That person just tushnim bhavet. If he spoke modern English, he'd say chill out. Tushnim bhavet. Becomes quiet. Is no longer driven by raga dvesha to go to the mall, to go to Amazon.com. You don't need to get anything for the sake of fulfillment, contentment. Therefore, such a person is nirihaha, free from desire, not driven by raga dvesha. End of the prior line says the same thing. Nivritta trishnas, the one from whom desire has gone away. Nice expression. Nivritta trishnas. You don't get rid of desires. They just go away. Right? It's like house guests. You can't get rid of them. You can't push them out the door. Eventually, they just leave. So your desires are the same way. You can't just push them out the door. They don't just stop. But when you discover that true source of contentment within you, those desires just evaporate. They're gone. And then Sri Krishna concludes, Sandrishyate. This is okay, we'll finish here. This is one of the really important teachings that you usually find in advanced texts. So that's why I'm so surprised by this passage. It's really quite sophisticated Advaita Vedanta. He says, sandrishyate kwacha. So kwacha, say whenever. Whenever sandrishyate, whenever the world is experienced after enlightenment. So now the question is, what is it like? Everyone wants to know. What is it like to be enlightened? What is it like for the enlightened person, after becoming enlightened? How do they sandrishyate? Yat idam, yadi idam. How do they experience idam, this world? Well, they experience this world avastu buddhya. They experience this world. Buddhi here means attitude. They experience the world with the attitude that it's a vastu, it's not completely real. For example, by the way, this is back to our basic Vedanta. You experience the pot knowing it's nothing but clay. Does it mean you don't experience the pot? You do experience the pot, but you know it's nothing but clay. This is the enlightened person's drishti. Does the enlightened person experience the world? Yes. But like you know that this pot is nothing but clay, the enlightened person knows this world is nothing but Brahman. It's the same thing. Enlightened doesn't mean, we have all these fictitious ideas. The person walks, her feet don't quite touch the floor. Or with children, I keep joking with children, enlightened people must glow in the dark, right? All these silly notions. The enlightened person sees what you see, but draws very different conclusions. The conclusions you might draw might lead to suffering. For example, if something in the mall or something on Amazon.com really caught your eye, leads to suffering. The enlightened person can walk through the mall. It'd be interesting if I walked through a mall. I used to walk through airports all the time like this, and I found that fascinating to see other people's response. Anyway. It's a completely different thing. An enlightened person walks through the mall, will they see the same things you do? Absolutely. Will they draw the same conclusions that you do? Probably not. Okay? So he concludes then, this is lovely. Tyaktam bhavet, everything that you have turned your back on. Everything that you've turned your back on, smritihi bhavet, literally remains in your memory. What that means is there is continuity of behavior, memory. Continuity of behavior. How does an enlightened person behave after they're enlightened? And the answer is, they behave the same as they were before they were enlightened. Remember that Zen story I've told many times? The master tells his student, before I was enlightened, I chopped wood and carried water. Now that I'm enlightened, I chop wood and carry water. There's no change in behavior. There's continuity. Can you imagine someone who likes coffee gets enlightened, now they don't like coffee anymore? Does that make any sense? It's so counterintuitive, right? These behaviors are burned into, in fact, not just our minds, they're burned into our neurons. Neuroscience tells us that everything in your memory actually has affected the neurons in your brain. It's not just stored in this ethereal memory, it's physically stored in the synapses of your neurons. So behavior is not going to change for an enlightened person, there is continuity. Smriti is the word used here. Smriti bhavet. The enlightened person behaves the same after enlightenment as before, but, and behaves that way, he says, last word is smritihi anipatat, until he or she dies. So you behave in one way before enlightenment, you behave the same way after enlightenment until nipata, until death. But what is the difference? Na brahmaya. None of that behavior, none of that experience leads to Brahma, error. The erroneous notion that something out there I need, or something out there I need to avoid. That's Brahma. That's an error in thinking. We used the term before, shobhana adhyasa. You superimpose value on something, or a negative value, something you need to avoid. So you superimpose positive value, negative value. If you could just stop, it doesn't work this way. If you could just stop doing that, raga and dvesha would immediately disappear. Follow this logic, and we'll end the class with this observation. And see if you can catch the problem. If you could turn off this false superimposition of value, or anti-value, things that you have to avoid. If you could just go click and turn it off, what would happen to your raga dvesha? Gone. Right? So the easiest way to get rid of raga dvesha is stop having value for anything. Does that work? How do you stop having value? How do you stop having value for family? How do you stop having value for coffee? How do you stop having value for all the goodies in the mall and on Amazon.com? You can't just stop having value. I won't call it a trick, but there's a sequence here. In order to discover the valuelessness of all the goodies in the mall and Amazon.com, go back to the second line. Nija sukha anubhavaha. This is the key. The thing that's required is the anubhava, the experience of nija sukha, your own fullness, your own contentment, to discover that your true nature is all you need for contentment. You don't need anything else. Only after that discovery has been made, only then will you be able to turn around, parinivartya. Turn your back on the mall, turn your back on Amazon.com, only after this nija sukha anubhava, the discovery of your own innate fullness, that so-called inner divinity. That's the key. Just a quick observation. How many times have you heard a teacher say, or a text say, you must give up all your desires? And it's usually accompanied like this finger. You must give up all your desires. Do you see the error in that teaching? It doesn't work like that. It would be much better, instead of saying if you want to say you must, then the next part of the sentence should not be give up your desire. If you want to say you must, the second part of the sentence should be you must discover nija sukha, the true source of contentment and peace within. That's the correct statement. Okay, a good place to conclude. I'm not sure if we'll finish the chapter or not in the next class. We'll see. Quick announcements. Tomorrow, our Vedanta class feels like Sunday to me because this is such wonderful Vedanta. Tomorrow, Upadesha Sahasri class at 10 o'clock, followed at 11 by satsang. Bring your questions. Also, I just want to give you a heads up, as they say, and that is in 2 weeks we will be celebrating our 24th anniversary. So we'll have a nice, simple program, but nice. As usual, we start with some puja, homa. I'll have a nice talk, discourse for the occasion, and hopefully we'll have nice weather. We can go outside and have some picnic together afterwards. So put it on your calendar, June 1st, right? Yeah, so we'll plan on that. All right, we'll conclude with our prayers. Om Gananahantva Ganapatigam Avamahe Kaving Gavinam Upamashravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspatahana Shrinvan Uttavasira Sadhanam Om Mahaganapataye Namaha Ishvaro Gurudhatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramhanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschad Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat.